The first wolf screamed beneath the stones before Lyra Vale touched the altar. Not growled, not howled, screamed. The sound tore through the royal hall like something ancient waking inside a grave. Every noble in the Moonfang court went silent. The silver banners hanging above the throne trembled in the sudden wind that rushed through the chamber, extinguishing half the candles at once. Ash swirled across the black marble floor, while hundreds of watching wolves shifted uneasily in their seats. Lyra stood alone at the center of the moon altar with iron around her wrists. Not because she was dangerous, because she was weak. Or at least that was what the kingdom believed. "The wolfless girl is trembling," one noblewoman whispered. "She should," another answered coldly. "Tonight the moon goddess exposes dead blood." Lyra lowered her eyes as laughter quietly spread through the court. She had heard the same whispers her entire life. Dead wolf, empty soul, cursed blood. She was 22 years old and had never shifted. Not once. Among wolves, that was worse than being crippled, worse than being poor. A child without a wolf was considered unfinished by the gods themselves. And yet somehow, against all reason, Lyra had survived the royal trials long enough to stand beneath the moon altar tonight. Not because she was strong, because she endured. That alone had made the kingdom hate her. The high priestess stepped forward in robes pale as bone. Silver chains hung from her sleeves, chiming softly against the stone. High Priestess Seline never raised her voice. She never needed to. "The moon sees all falsehood," she said calmly, her cold eyes fixed on Lyra. "If there is life within your wolf, the altar shall reveal it." Lyra's throat tightened. Across the hall, the Alpha King watched silently from his throne. Kyle Draven, King of the Northern Crown, the most feared Alpha in all 5 kingdoms. Even seated, he carried the terrifying stillness of a predator moments before violence. Black armor covered his broad frame, marked with silver wolf sigils darkened by war. A scar crossed one side of his throat, disappearing beneath the collar of his tunic. But it was his eyes that unsettled people most. Not golden like other alphas. Silver. Cold silver. Like moonlight on a blade. He had not spoken a single word since Lyra entered the court. But he had watched her, constantly, and somehow that frightened her more than the chains. Seline raised a ceremonial dagger. "Place your hand upon the altar." Lyra stepped forward slowly. The entire court leaned closer. She could feel their anticipation. They wanted humiliation. They wanted proof she was broken. The moon altar stood carved from ancient white stone, covered in claw marks older than the kingdom itself. Wolves had once knelt there to swear loyalty to the first kings. Now it would expose her weakness before the realm. Lyra placed her trembling hand against the cold surface. Nothing happened. A few nobles smirked. Seline's expression darkened with satisfaction. "You see?" the priestess announced. "The blood is empty. Her wolf is dead." Soft laughter spread through the chamber. Lyra felt heat rise painfully behind her eyes. But she refused to cry. Not here. Not before them. She had spent too many years surviving their cruelty to break now. Seline lifted the dagger higher. "By order of the Moon Temple, Lyra Vale shall be stripped of trial rights and exiled beyond the Black Forest before sunrise." The words hit harder than the chains. Exile. The Black Forest was not wilderness. It was a graveyard. No wolf crossed those woods and returned sane. The court erupted into satisfied murmurs. But then, the altar cracked. A deep sound echoed beneath the floor. Once, twice. Then the screaming began again. Every candle in the hall exploded outward simultaneously. Nobles recoiled in terror, as freezing wind tore through the chamber. The marble floor beneath Lyra's feet split open with violent force. And somewhere far below the kingdom, wolves answered, hundreds of them, howling, dead voices rising beneath the earth. The sound froze every living wolf in the room. Kale stood instantly. For the first time all night, genuine emotion crossed the Alpha King's face. Shock. Lyra stumbled backward as silver light burst from the broken altar and spiraled violently around her body. The iron chains around her wrists glowed red-hot. The ghostly shape of a massive wolf briefly appeared behind her. Ancien, Dowering. Its eyes burned blue-white in the darkness. Then it vanished. The hall fell silent. No one moved. No one breathed. Seline's face had gone pale. "That," she whispered, "that is impossible." Kael descended from the throne slowly. The room parted for him instantly. His silver eyes never left Lyra as he stopped before the shattered altar. The air around him smelled faintly of frost and blood. "What did you summon?" he asked quietly. Lyra stared at him in terror. "I didn't summon anything." But somewhere beneath the kingdom, the dead wolves were still howling, and the stone beneath the court continued to tremble. Kael looked down at the crack spreading across the moon altar. Then, slowly, his dying wolf stirred painfully inside his chest for the first time in years, and that frightened him more than the ghosts. The trembling beneath the palace did not stop after the court was dismissed. It followed Lyra, like breathing beneath the stone. Servants refused to approach her. Guards would not meet her eyes. Even the royal hounds tucked their tails and whimpered when she passed through the corridors. By midnight, rumors had already spread through Greyhaven. The dead had answered her blood. Some called her cursed. Others whispered something worse. Moon touched. Inside the eastern tower chamber where she had been confined, Lyra sat beside the narrow window and pressed her shaking hands against her knees, trying to steady her breathing. The room smelled of old cedar smoke and cold iron. Snow drifted beyond the castle walls, covering the cliffs beneath the kingdom in pale silver. She should have been exiled already. Instead, the Alpha King had stopped the sentence personally. No explanation. No mercy. Only one command, spoken before the entire court. She remains under royal authority. That single sentence had changed everything. Because now, the kingdom feared two things: the girl with dead wolves beneath her skin, and the reason the Alpha King refused to let her go. A hard knock sounded against the chamber door. Lyra rose instantly. 3 royal guards entered first, heavily armed, despite escorting a single unshifted woman. Then Kyle stepped inside behind them. The room felt smaller immediately. The guards bowed and exited without a word, shutting the heavy door behind him. Silence settled. Kael removed his black gloves slowly, his silver gaze fixed on Lyra the entire time. Up close, he looked even more dangerous than he had in court. Not because of violence, because of restraint, like a creature holding itself together through sheer force. "You heard them beneath the altar," he said. It was not a question. Lyra hesitated before answering. "Yes." "What did they say?" Her throat tightened. Nothing clearly. That was partly true. She had heard voices in the screaming dark beneath the palace, but they had not spoken words. Only grief. Ancien grief. Kael studied her carefully. "You're afraid." Lyra almost laughed at that. "Everyone in your kingdom looks at me as if I carry death inside my ribs," she said quietly. "Of course I'm afraid." Something unreadable flickered across his face. "Not pity. Never pity. Good," he murmured. "Fear keeps people alive." Lyra looked away toward the snow beyond the window. "Then I should have lived forever by now." The silence that followed felt strangely sharp. Kael stepped closer. Not enough to touch her. Enough for her pulse to quicken anyway. "You do not speak like a weak woman. I learned early that weak women are eaten first." For a moment, something dark moved behind his eyes. Recognition. Then it vanished again beneath cold control. Kael turned toward the hearth. "The High Priestess wants you executed before dawn." Lyra's stomach tightened. "And you?" He did not answer immediately. Instead, he stared into the fire as if searching for something inside it. "When the altar broke," he said quietly, "my wolf woke." Lyra blinked. Every child in the northern kingdoms grew up hearing stories about alpha wolves. Powerful, immortal, impossible to weaken. Yet something in his voice sounded dangerously close to exhaustion. Kael flexed one hand slowly. "For 3 years, my wolf has been dying." The confession stunned her. He finally looked at her again. No healer understands why. No priestess can stop it. Every moon cycle he grows weaker. His jaw tightened. Tonight was the first time I felt him move without pain. Lyra stared at him. That's impossible. Yes, Kale said softly. And yet here you are. Wind rattled the tower windows violently. Somewhere below the castle, wolves began howling again. Not living wolves. The dead ones. Kyle heard them too. His expression hardened instantly. You will remain inside this tower until I understand what you are. Lyra's fear flared into anger. What I am, she repeated. You speak about me like some cursed relic buried under your kingdom. Kale stepped forward suddenly. Too fast. Predatory. Lyra's back hit the stone wall before she realized he had moved. The air between them turned sharp. Dangerous. You think I do not know fear? He said quietly. Up close, she could see exhaustion beneath his composure now. Tiny fractures in the mask. My counsel waits for weakness, he continued. The priests wait for failure. Rival alphas wait for my wolf to die so they can tear this kingdom apart. His silver eyes locked onto hers. And now the dead begin screaming beneath my throne whenever you bleed. Lyra's breath caught. Kale stared at her for one long heartbeat. Then slowly, his gaze dropped to her wrist, to the bruises left by the silver chains. Something shifted in his expression. Not softness. Something more dangerous. Restraint cracking. You should have cried in the court, he said suddenly. Lyra frowned slightly. What? Most would have. I learned not to. Why? She swallowed hard. Because crying had never saved her. Because every tear she shed growing up only made people look relieved that the cursed girl finally hurt the way they wanted her to. But saying that aloud felt unbearable. So instead she whispered, No one comes when I cry. Kyle went completely still. The fire crackled softly behind him, and for one impossible second, the terrifying Alpha King looked like a man carrying an old wound he had never survived. Then the moment shattered. A violent knock thundered against the chamber doors. The guards outside shouted, Your Majesty. Kyle turned sharply. The doors burst open. A bloodied soldier stumbled inside, breathing hard. The lower crypts, he gasped. The royal burial gates opened. Kale's expression darkened instantly. That's impossible. The dead wolves are rising. The room went cold. Lyra felt it immediately. A pull beneath her ribs. Not pain. Calling. Kale noticed her reaction at once. His eyes narrowed. You feel them. She tried to deny it. Couldn't. Yes. The soldier looked horrified. Majesty. The spirits attacked the temple guards. Kyle grabbed his sword from the table beside the hearth. Stay inside this tower, he ordered Lyra. But before he could leave, a howl exploded beneath the castle. The floor shook violently. Lyra gasped as silver light suddenly burst beneath the cracks in the stone walls. Then the voices came clearly for the first time. Not screams. Words. Daughter. Lyra Froze. The voice sounded ancient. Male. Broken with grief. Kale heard nothing except the howl, but he saw the terror flood her face. What did they say? Lyra looked toward the floor beneath them. The calling grew stronger. Daughter, come below. Her pulse thundered painfully. I think, she whispered. They want me. Kale's grip tightened around his sword. No. Another violent tremor shook the tower. This time the windows shattered inward. Icy wind exploded through the room, and standing beyond the broken glass, balanced impossibly on the snowy ledge outside the tower, was a massive spectral wolf with glowing blue eyes. The guards shouted in terror. One dropped his weapon instantly. The ghost wolf stared directly at Lyra, waiting. Kyle stepped protectively in front of her without thinking. The spirit growled. Lo. Ancien. Warning. The Alpha King slowly drew his blade, and beneath the castle, thousands of dead wolves answered the sound. The ghost wolf lunged through the broken window. The guards shouted as steel flashed through the chamber, but the spirit did not move like flesh. Its massive body passed through one soldier entirely, leaving him collapsed on the floor, screaming from freezing pain. Kyle stepped forward instantly. His sword cut through silver mist. The wolf vanished, then reappeared behind Lyra. She gasped as cold flooded the room. Not ordinary cold. Burial cold. The kind that belonged beneath crypt stones and forgotten graves. The spectral beast lowered its enormous head beside her shoulder, not attacking, waiting. Kale's silver eyes narrowed dangerously. Get away from her. The wolf ignored him completely. Its glowing gaze remained fixed on Lyra as another voice entered her mind. Come below. Lyra's pulse hammered painfully. What are you? She whispered. The spirit's form flickered. For a brief instant, she saw images inside the mist surrounding it. A battlefield drowned in snow. Moon banners burning. A woman wearing silver armor kneeling before wolves made of light. Then, blood. So much blood. The vision vanished instantly. Lyra stumbled backward, breathing hard. Kale caught her arm before she fell. The moment his hand touched her skin, pain ripped through him. He sucked in a sharp breath. His wolf surged violently beneath his ribs, not weakening, awakening. Kyle released her immediately, staring at his own hand as if it had betrayed him. The spirit wolf growled softly, almost approvingly. Then it leaped backward through the shattered window and disappeared into the storm. Silence crashed over the chamber. The guards looked terrified now, not of the spirit, of Lyra. One of them crossed himself with the old moon sign. Majesty, he whispered carefully. The legends say the dead wolves only answer royal blood. Kael's expression darkened instantly. Leave us. The guards hesitated. Now. They obeyed immediately. The doors slammed shut. Snow blew through the broken windows while Kael stood motionless in the center of the chamber. Then slowly, he turned toward Lyra. Who was your mother? The question struck her like ice. Lyra frowned. What? You heard me. I barely remember her. That is not what I asked. Lyra's chest tightened painfully. My mother died when I was young. Kael watched her carefully. And your father? I never knew him. That part was true. She only remembered fragments of her mother now. Soft hands, dark hair, a lullaby sung beside winter fires, and fear, always fear, as if her mother spent every day waiting for someone to find them. Kael walked toward the shattered window slowly. Beyond the cliffs, the entire kingdom seemed restless tonight. Wolves howled from distant forests, while storm clouds swallowed the moon overhead. The old royal bloodlines could command spirit wolves, he said quietly, but they were exterminated generations ago. Lyra swallowed hard. Exterminated by who? Kyle's silence answered enough. The royal court, the crown, his family. A strange pain crossed his face briefly, before he buried it again beneath control. The dead wolves beneath this kingdom are not random spirits, he continued. They were guardians once, ancient wolves bound to the first throne. Then why are they screaming? Kael's jaw tightened. I intend to find out. Before Lyra could answer, another howl echoed beneath the castle. Closer this time. The entire tower shook violently. Dust rained from the ceiling. Then suddenly, Kyle staggered. His hand slammed against the stone wall. Pain twisted across his face. Lyra stared in shock. The Alpha King looked barely able to breathe. Kyle, don't. His voice came out rough. Animal. For one horrifying second. Silver veins spread beneath the skin of his throat. His wolf was fighting something inside him. Something vicious. Kael forced himself upright slowly. But Lyra saw blood dripping from his clenched fist onto the floor. You're hurt. I said don't, but the words lacked force now. Another wave of pain hit him. Kael dropped to one knee. A low growl escaped his chest. Not human. Lyra forgot her fear instantly. She rushed toward him before she could stop herself. Stay back. Too late. Her hands caught his shoulders. The moment she touched him, everything exploded inside her mind. She saw chains beneath the throne. ancient runes carved into flesh. A king kneeling beside a dying wolf while priests whispered curses around him. Then, another image slammed into her. A little boy, with silver eyes, standing alone beside a coffin. Blood running from his nose while nobles bowed around him pretending not to notice. Kael, young, terribly alone. The vision vanished violently. Lyra gasped and nearly collapsed. Kael grabbed her before she hit the floor. Both of them stared at each other in shock. "You saw it," he said hoarsely. Lyra could barely breathe. "The curse." His expression hardened instantly. "You tell no one. But they poisoned your wolf. That is not your concern. It is if your kingdom plans to execute me while hiding the truth." Anger flashed between them. Reeling. Alive. Kyle rose slowly to his full height again, though pain still lingered beneath his expression. "You think truth matters in royal courts?" he asked coldly. "Truth is useful only when power allows it." Lyra's eyes burned. "So that's it? You know something is wrong beneath this kingdom and still protect the throne?" Kael stepped toward her sharply. "I protect my people. By lying to them? By surviving long enough to keep them alive?" The room fell silent. Heavy breathing. Snow drifting through broken windows. The tension between them felt dangerous now, in an entirely different way. Because beneath the anger, something else had begun growing. Recognition. And both of them feared it. A knock interrupted the silence. This time softer. Controlled. Kael opened the door halfway. Commander Rowan stood outside in black armor, dusted with snow. Unlike most wolves in the palace, Rowan did not look frightened. He looked wary. "There's movement in the lower crypts again," Rowan said quietly. "The temple guards refuse to go below." Kael glanced toward Lyra. "The High Priestess? She's demanding immediate execution before sunrise." Of course she was. Fear spread fastest when people sensed truth approaching. Kael looked back at Rowan. "Prepare the lower passage." Rowan frowned slightly. "You're taking the girl down there? She's already connected to whatever's waking beneath this castle. And if the spirits possess her?" Kael's silver eyes turned cold. "Then I'll deal with it myself." Lyra hated how calm he sounded saying that, as if killing her had already become one of the possibilities he accepted. Rowan bowed once and disappeared down the corridor. Kael grabbed his sword belt. "We're going below." Lyra stared at him. "Now? The dead wolves called you for a reason." Fear curled through her stomach instantly. But beneath the fear, something deeper pulled at her. The same feeling she had sensed all her life during storms and moonlit nights. Like someone waiting beyond a locked door. Kael paused, near the chamber entrance. "You can still refuse." Lyra looked toward the darkness beneath the castle, toward the howling buried under stone. Then quietly she said, "No one has ever asked me to walk toward the truth before." For the first time since meeting her, Kael almost smiled. It vanished quickly, but she saw it, and somehow that frightened her more than the ghosts, because monsters were easier to survive than hope. Together they descended beneath the castle. The lower passages of Greyhaven were older than the kingdom itself. The walls changed first. Smooth palace stone gave way to rough black rock, covered in ancient claw marks. Blue torches burned along the tunnels, casting pale light over carved wolf statues lining the corridors. Some had been defaced, eyes scratched out, names removed. Lyra noticed immediately. Someone tried to erase them. Kael's expression remained grim. Yes, as they walked deeper, the air grew colder. Not winter cold, crypt cold, the kind that settled inside bones. Then Lyra heard it again. Whispers. Soft voices echoing through the dark. "Daughter, remember." Kael stopped suddenly. Ahead of them stood a massive stone gate half buried beneath roots and dust. Ancient symbols covered its surface, and at the center, the same crescent and fang mark that had burned across Lyra's chest during the trial. Her breath caught. Kael looked at her slowly. "You recognize it." "I've seen it before." "Where?" Lyra stepped closer to the gate. A memory surfaced painfully inside her mind. She was small, maybe 5 years old, her mother kneeling beside a hidden fireplace, pressing her fingers against a silver pendant marked with the same symbol. "Never let them see this," her mother had whispered. The memory hit so hard, Lyra nearly staggered. Kyle caught her elbow instantly. "What is it?" "My mother." Her voice trembled. "She had this mark." Silence. Then a low, grinding sound echoed through the crypt. The ancient gate began opening on its own. Blue light spilled through the widening crack, and from somewhere deep inside the darkness beyond, a massive wolf growled. Not dead, alive. Kyle slowly drew his sword. Lyra's heart stopped, because in the glowing darkness behind the gate, two enormous silver eyes opened, and they were staring directly at her. The growl rolled through the crypt like distant thunder. L'Auve. Ancien. Alive. Lyra froze beside the half-open gate, while blue light spilled across the stone floor around her feet. Dust drifted from the ceiling in slow spirals as the massive silver eyes beyond the darkness continued watching her. Kyle stepped in front of her instinctively, sword raised. Every muscle in his body tightened. Not fear. Preparation. The kind born from years, surviving things capable of killing kings. The creature beyond the gate moved slowly. Heavy paws scraped against stone. Then, a colossal wolf emerged from the shadows. Lyra's breath caught painfully. It was enormous, larger than any wolf she had ever imagined possible. Its fur was pale silver streaked with black scars, and ancient iron chains wrapped around its massive body, disappearing into the walls of the crypt itself. Broken spears protruded from the stone around it, as if entire armies had once tried to pin it there. But the worst part was its eyes. Not monstrous. Grieving. The wolf stared directly at Lyra. Then, slowly, it bowed its head. Kyle's expression changed instantly. Shock. True shock. "The first guardian," he whispered. Lyra looked at him. "What?" Kyle did not take his eyes off the beast. There are old stories about a spirit wolf bound beneath the throne after the Blood Wars. His voice had gone quieter now. "I thought they were myths." The giant wolf exhaled heavily. Cold mist flooded the chamber. Then a voice echoed through the crypt, not spoken aloud. Inside their minds. "Last daughter of Vayne." Lyra stumbled backward. The wolf knew her. Kale stiffened beside her. "You can hear it too?" "Yes." The spirit's massive silver gaze shifted toward the Alpha King. Blood of Draven. The air changed instantly. The wolf's grief sharpened into rage. Kale raised his sword higher. The creature's chains rattled violently. "Murderer's heir." The words slammed through the crypt. Lyra saw Kale flinch. Only slightly, but enough. The spirit wolf stepped forward, chains dragging behind it with deafening sound. "Your father buried us beneath this kingdom." Blue fire ignited along the walls. Visions exploded around them. The crypt vanished. Lyra suddenly stood inside another time. Another kingdom. The throne hall drenched in blood. Wolves screaming. Silver-armored soldiers cutting down women, bearing the crescent and fang sigil. And at the center, a king wearing the Draven crown. Kale's father. He stood before a kneeling woman with dark hair and silver eyes. Lyra's breath stopped. The woman looked exactly like her. Not identical. Older. Stronger. But unmistakably blood. "She was your ancestor," the spirit wolf said. The vision shifted violently. The silver-eyed woman screamed as chains wrapped around the ancient wolves surrounding the throne. Moon priests carved runes into their flesh while the Draven King watched. "They feared us," the spirit growled. "Because we remembered truth." The vision ended abruptly. Lyra nearly collapsed. Kyle caught her arm again. This time neither of them pulled away immediately. His grip was warm despite the freezing crypt. "You're bleeding," he said quietly. Lyra looked down. Blood dripped slowly from her nose onto the stone. The moment it touched the floor, the giant wolf's chains trembled violently. The spirit inhaled sharply. Then slowly, painfully, one ancient iron chain cracked apart. Kyle stared in disbelief. The wolf looked at Lyra again. "Your blood frees the buried." Fear curled through her stomach. What does that mean? The wolf stepped closer. When the last daughter awakens, the kingdom remembers. Kael's expression darkened immediately. No. The spirit ignored him. The throne was built on slaughter. The dead will rise until the dead is answered. Another chain shattered. The crypt shook violently. Far above them, wolves across the kingdom began howling. Lyra felt the sound inside her chest. Not hearing it, feeling it, like something ancient recognizing her soul. Kael noticed instantly. His eyes narrowed. The spirits are binding themselves to you. I didn't ask for this. No, he said quietly, but they did. Another violent tremor shook the crypt. Dust exploded from the ceiling. Then suddenly, Kael's wolf snarled inside him. Pain hit him hard enough to force him down onto one knee. Lyra turned instantly. Kael. Black veins spread briefly beneath his skin again. His breathing became ragged. The spirit wolf watched silently. The curse tightens. It growled. Lyra crouched beside Kael, despite his attempt to push her away. You're dying. Kael laughed once. Harsh. Without humor. You finally noticed. His voice sounded rougher now. More wolf than man. Lyra looked toward the spirit desperately. What curse? The giant wolf's silver eyes darkened. The bloodline punishment. Kael closed his eyes. Enough. But the spirit continued. The Draven kings chained the dead beneath the throne. In return, their wolves were condemned to rot from within. Lyra stared at Kael in horror. That's why your wolf is dying. Kael rose unsteadily. And if the council learns the truth, the kingdom fractures into civil war. His silver eyes locked onto hers. Now you understand why silence matters. Before Lyra could answer, footsteps echoed from the tunnel behind them. Kael spun instantly. Commander Rowan rushed into the crypt, breathing hard. Majesty. He stopped dead upon seeing the giant chained wolf. Even Rowan looked shaken. Kael straightened immediately despite obvious pain. What happened? The High Priestess gathered the council. Rowan swallowed hard. They've declared the girl corrupted by forbidden necromancy. Lyra's chest tightened. Kael's expression turned lethal. And they issued a death decree. Silence. Cold. Deadly silence. Rowan continued carefully. At sunrise, they intend to seize control of the throne under emergency moon law. Lyra looked between them. They're staging a coup. Yes, Kael said softly. Not angry. Worse. Certain. The spirit wolf growled low behind them. The false priests. Fear awakening truth. Kael ignored it. How many support the council? More than half the noble packs. Rowan answered grimly. They're terrified of what's happening beneath the kingdom. Of course they were. The dead wolves. The shattered altar. The ancient spirit bound below the throne. Everything the kingdom buried was beginning to rise. And fear always needed something to kill. Kael turned toward Lyra slowly. You need to leave Greyhaven tonight. Lyra blinked. What? If the council takes the throne before dawn, they'll execute you publicly. I'm not running. You don't understand what they're capable of. No. She snapped suddenly. You don't understand. Both men went silent. Emotion burned painfully behind her ribs now. Years of silence. Years of swallowing fear. They spent my entire life calling me empty, she whispered shakily. Broken. Soulless. And now that something impossible finally answers me, they want me dead because it threatens them. Kael stepped toward her. Lyra. No. Her eyes burned. I am tired of surviving quietly, while powerful people decide whether I deserve to exist. The crypt fell silent. Even the spirit wolf watched her carefully now. Kael stared at her for a long moment. Then, something inside his expression shifted. Respect. Dangerous, reluctant respect. You would stand against the entire royal council. Lyra looked directly at him. I already survived worse things than them. The words hit harder than she intended, because Kael understood exactly what she meant. Not battle. Loneliness. The kind that hollowed people slowly while they still breathed. Another tremor shook the crypt. this time stronger. The spirit wolf suddenly lifted its head sharply. They are coming. Kyle turned instantly toward the tunnels. Too late. Silver fire exploded through the corridor entrance. Temple guards poured into the crypt, wearing moon-marked armor. Behind them walked High Priestess Seline herself, her pale robes flowing through the darkness like ghost smoke. Her cold eyes fixed immediately on Lyra, then widened slightly upon seeing the chained spirit wolf. "So," Seline whispered softly, "the last grave. Heir truly lives." Kale stepped protectively in front of Lyra. "You entered royal crypts without permission." Seline smiled faintly. "The crown no longer belongs to a dying wolf." Kael's expression became terrifyingly still. Around them, armed guards raised silver-tipped spears. Seline lifted one hand. "The girl comes with us." The spirit wolf growled thunderously. Blue flames erupted along the walls. But Seline did not flinch. Instead, she looked directly at Lyra. "You think these spirits love you?" the priestess asked softly. "Child, they are using you." Lyra's pulse faltered slightly. Seline stepped closer. "The dead do not rise for mercy. They rise for vengeance." Kael's hand moved toward his sword. "Careful." But Celine's gaze never left Lyra. "Do you know what happened to your mother?" she whispered. "Lyra froze." The priestess smiled coldly. "I do." And somewhere deep beneath the crypt, something enormous began waking in the dark. The crypt went deathly still. Even the chained spirit wolf stopped growling. Lyra stared at High Priestess Seline as the words echoed painfully through her chest. "You know what happened to your mother." For one terrible moment, the world narrowed into silence. Not because Lyra trusted the priestess, because she wanted the answer anyway. Seline saw it immediately. Hope, the cruelest weakness. "You're lying," Kale said coldly. The priestess smiled faintly without looking at him. "Am I?" Silver fire flickered across the crypt walls while armed temple guards slowly surrounded the chamber. Their spears shook despite their training. None of them wanted to stand this close to the ancient wolf spirit chained beneath the throne. But fear of Seline was stronger. The high priestess had ruled the Moon Temple for nearly 20 years. People feared her because she never seemed emotional, never angry, never loud, only certain. Seline stepped toward Lyra carefully. She died screaming beneath this kingdom. Kael moved instantly. His sword flashed free. Enough. Temple guards raised their weapons immediately. The chained spirit wolf roared. The entire crypt shook violently, but Seline remained calm. "She deserves truth," the priestess said softly. "Or do you intend to hide everything from her as your father did?" The words struck Kael like a blade. Lyra saw it, the flicker of old rage beneath his control. Seline noticed too. Good. That had been intentional. The priestess wanted him emotional, unbalanced. Weak rulers made easier prey. "You speak boldly for someone standing inside my crypt," Kael said quietly. Seline finally looked at him fully. "You are no longer frightening, Kael." Silence crashed through the chamber. Even Rowan stiffened beside the king. Because no one spoke to the Alpha King that way. No one. Seline took another slow step forward. "The kingdom smells your weakness now. Wolves whisper about your fading power. Noble packs prepare for war." Her pale gaze sharpened. "And now you hide a necromancer girl beneath your throne, while dead wolves crawl through sacred ground." Kael's silver eyes became ice. "She is under my protection. Then perhaps you should ask yourself why the dead chose her instead of you." That hit harder than any weapon. Lyra felt it immediately. Kael's wolf snarled violently inside him. Pain flashed across his face again. The curse was worsening. The spirit wolf's chains rattled heavily. The throne rejects poisoned blood. Kael ignored the spirit, but Lyra saw the exhaustion now beneath his coldness. The strain, the constant battle happening beneath his skin. Seline smiled slightly. "Yes," she whispered. "You hear them too now, don't you? The dead blame House Draven." Kael stepped forward slowly. Every guard in the crypt tensed. "Leave," he said softly. The warning in his voice turned the air dangerous. But Seline did not retreat. Instead, she looked directly at Lyra again. Your mother begged for mercy before they executed her. Lyra stopped breathing. Kael's expression darkened instantly. Seline. She cried your name while they carved moon runes into her skin. Enough. Kael's roar exploded through the crypt. The walls cracked. Temple guards stumbled backward in terror as his wolf surged violently beneath his body. Silver flames flickered briefly across his eyes. But Seline had already achieved what she wanted. Lyra was shaking now. Not from fear, from grief. Her mother had not abandoned her. She had died. And somehow, the temple had been involved. Seline saw the realization breaking open inside her, and pressed harder. She died, because your bloodline refused obedience, the priestess whispered. The veins believe the dead should judge kings. Her eyes sharpened coldly. So the crown buried them. Lyra's chest hurt. Everything hurt. All those years wondering why her mother never returned. Why people looked at her with hatred instead of pity. Why fear followed her everywhere. The kingdom had murdered her bloodline, and then rewritten the story until the victims became monsters. The spirit wolf growled thunderously. Truth buried becomes poison. Kael looked toward Lyra. For the first time since meeting her, he looked uncertain. Not politically, personally, as if he knew there was no version of this moment that wouldn't wound her. Lyra looked back at him slowly. Did you know? Kael's silence lasted too long. Not because he was guilty, because he didn't know enough. And that was worse. No, he admitted finally. The honesty hurt anyway. Seline smiled faintly. You see, she murmured. Even your king stands on bones he does not understand. Then suddenly, the crypt floor exploded. Stone shattered beneath the guards. Screams erupted. One temple soldier vanished instantly into darkness, as massive claws burst upward from beneath the floor itself. The creature that emerged was not a wolf. It was something older. A monstrous skeletal beast covered in silver burial chains, its massive body made of blackened bone and ghost fire. Empty eye sockets burned blue as it roared violently at everyone inside the crypt. Temple guards panicked instantly. Moon, protect us. It escaped the lower graves. The chained spirit wolf beside Lyra snarled furiously. Ancient guardian broken. The monstrous beast lunged. Kael moved first. His sword crashed against bone with explosive force. Silver sparks flying through the crypt. The impact alone shattered nearby stone pillars. But the creature barely slowed. It slammed into Kael hard enough to throw him across the chamber. Lyra screamed his name. The beast turned instantly toward her. Its hollow eyes locked onto the crescent mark, glowing faintly beneath her skin. Then, it bowed. Everyone froze. The skeletal creature lowered itself before Lyra, like a loyal hound before its queen. Temple guards stared in horror. Seline's face finally lost composure. No. The beast growled softly at Lyra. Not threatening, waiting. Lyra's pulse hammered painfully. Images flooded her mind again. Ancient wolves. Burial rites. Guardians kneeling before moonblood queens. Not necromancy. Bond. The dead wolves were not obeying her, because she enslaved them. They recognized her blood. Seline realized it too, and terror flashed across her face for the first time. Because this changed everything. If the kingdom learned the Vane bloodline were sacred guardians instead of cursed necromancers, the Moon Temple itself would collapse. Centuries of lies. Gone. Kill her! Seline screamed suddenly. The guards hesitated. The skeletal beast roared instantly. Blue fire erupted through the crypt. Kael rose from the shattered stone behind them, blood running from the corner of his mouth. His silver eyes had become almost entirely wolf now. Dangerous, beautiful, terrifying. He looked at the guards. Once. Anyone who touches her dies. No one moved, because they believed him. Seline's expression twisted coldly. You would risk civil war for her? Kael walked slowly toward Lyra, not taking his eyes off the guards. The war already began. The crypt trembled violently again. Far above them, alarm bells started ringing across the palace. Rowan cursed, softly. The noble packs are moving. Seline smiled. Yes. She looked directly at Kale. Your kingdom finally sees the truth. Kale stopped beside Lyra. His hand brushed hers briefly. Accidentally. Or maybe not. The mate bond pulsed sharply beneath both their skin. Pain. Heat. Recognition. Kyle pulled away instantly. Too late. Bias. Seline saw it. The priestess went still. Then horrified understanding crossed her face. No. Lyra looked between them in confusion. Seline stared directly at Kyle now. The dead chose his mate. Silence crashed through the crypt. Kale's jaw tightened dangerously. Careful. But Seline looked almost frightened now. Because if the kingdom discovered the Alpha King had formed a mate bond with the grave heir daughter of House Vane, the throne itself would split apart. The priestess stepped backward slowly. You fool, she whispered. Do you know what happens if the old bond awakens? Kael's expression remained cold, but Lyra felt fear ripple through him anyway. Real fear. Seline pointed toward Lyra. She carries the covenant blood. If the mate bond completes, the priestess swallowed hard. The dead wolves will answer her completely. The chained spirit wolf lifted its massive head. The queen blood awakens through the bonded king. Lyra's pulse stumbled painfully. Queen. No. Impossible. Kael looked at the spirit sharply. What does that mean? But before the spirit could answer, a deafening howl erupted from deep beneath the crypt. Not one wolf. Thousands. The walls split open violently. Blue light flooded the chamber. And somewhere beneath the kingdom, something ancient began rising toward the throne. The entire kingdom shook. Not metaphorically. Not spiritually. Physically. The mountain beneath Greyhaven groaned like a waking beast as cracks raced through the crypt walls. Dust thundered from the ceiling, while ancient burial torches exploded one by one in blue flame. Temple guards panicked instantly. Some ran. Some dropped to their knees praying. Others stared at Lyra with pure horror now, as if they finally understood they had chained something far older than a frightened girl. Kyle grabbed Lyra's wrist. We're leaving. Before she could answer, another violent tremor split the floor between them. The skeletal guardian beast roared protectively and lunged forward as massive stone pillars collapsed from above. Its gigantic body shielded Lyra from the falling debris, while ghost fire exploded across the crypt. Seline staggered backward, clutching one of the broken walls. No, she whispered. The lower throne is opening. Kael's expression darkened instantly. What lower throne? But the spirit wolf answered first. The buried court awakens. Blue light surged violently through the cracks in the ground. Then ancient stone began rising beneath the crypt floor itself. Not random stone. Steps. A staircase emerging from below the kingdom. Lyra stared in disbelief as dust and rubble cascaded away from black marble stairs hidden beneath centuries of burial. The air pouring upward smelled ancient. Moon ash, blood, winter roses, and death. The spirit wolf bowed its massive head toward the staircase. The last queen waits below. Lyra's breath caught painfully. Queen. Again that word. No, she was not a queen. She was the girl people crossed streets to avoid. The girl servants refused to touch. The girl who spent her childhood wondering if monsters truly lived inside her ribs. Kael stepped in front of her protectively. No one goes below. Seline laughed suddenly. Sharp. Unstable. You still think you control this? The high priestess pointed toward Lyra with trembling fingers. She carries covenant blood. If she reaches the buried throne, another howl exploded beneath the kingdom. This time, Lyra felt it directly inside her bones. Memories surged violently through her mind. A silver crown stained with blood. Women kneeling before spectral wolves. Ancient queens binding kings beneath moonlit vows. Then screaming. Fire. Massacre. The visions hit so hard, Lyra nearly collapsed. Kael caught her immediately. His hand slid around her waist to steady her. The mate bond pulsed sharply again. Both of them froze. Not because of pain this time. Because for one brief moment, The bond felt warm, alive. Kyle looked down at her. Too close. Dangerously close. His silver eyes searched her face as if he hated himself for needing to know whether she was hurt. Lyra. The way he said her name made her chest ache. Not command. Not suspicion. Fear. Fahir. And somehow, that terrified her more than the dead wolves. Because she could survive hatred. But tenderness destroyed people like her. Seline saw the moment between them, and panic sharpened across her face instantly. If the bond completes, she snapped, the old throne returns. Kyle looked at her coldly. Speak clearly. The priestess swallowed hard. The vain bloodline did not merely command spirit wolves. Her voice shook now despite her efforts to hide it. They crowned kings. Silence crashed through the crypt. Kale's expression became dangerously still. Seline pointed toward Lyra. The old queens carried covenant blood. Without them, kings could not fully bind themselves to the throne. She looked toward the rising staircase with visible fear. Your father destroyed House Vane to break that power forever. Lyra's chest tightened painfully. That was why her bloodline had been erased. Not because they were cursed, because they were necessary. Kyle looked toward the ancient staircase emerging beneath the crypt. Then toward Lyra. The realization in his eyes unsettled her deeply. You're saying the kingdom itself recognizes her. Seline gave a humorless laugh. The kingdom remembers her blood better than it remembers yours. That struck like a blade. Kyle's wolf snarled violently beneath his skin. The curse reacted instantly. Black veins spread across his throat again. Pain bent his posture slightly. Lyra grabbed his arm without thinking. Kyle. The moment she touched him, the pain eased. Not fully. Enough. Everyone in the crypt saw it. Roven's face went pale. The guards backed away slowly. And Seline looked horrified. Because now there was no denying it. The bond between them was real. Kyle looked down at Lyra's hand gripping his arm. For a long moment, neither moved. Then, softly, almost unwillingly, his fingers closed over hers. The crypt trembled harder. The buried staircase glowed brighter. The spirit wolf bowed lower. The throne accepts them. Seline's composure finally cracked completely. No. She stepped backward violently. No, this cannot happen again. Kyle looked at her sharply. Again? The priestess realized her mistake too late. Lyra saw genuine fear flash across her face now. Not fear of death. Fear of history, repeating itself. You know more than you've told us, Kale said coldly. Seline's silence confirmed everything. The Alpha King took one slow step toward her. Speak. But suddenly, a horn sounded above the kingdom. Lum. Deep. War horns. Rowan cursed under his breath. The Western Pax. Kale's expression darkened instantly. They moved already? They're surrounding the palace. Of course they were. The moment weakness touched the throne, rival alphas smelled blood. Seline smiled faintly despite the chaos now unfolding around them. The kingdom collapses tonight, Kyle. The Alpha King turned toward Rowan immediately. How many guards remain loyal? Not enough. Kale's jaw tightened. Civil va. Exactly what he had feared. Exactly what the council wanted. The throne weakened. The kingdom divided. And now the dead themselves were rising beneath Greyhaven. Another tremor shook the crypt, violently. Then, the staircase fully opened. Blue moonlight poured upward, from impossible depths below the kingdom. At the bottom of the stairs stood enormous black doors covered in silver claw marks. Ancien d'or, royal doors. And slowly, they began opening on their own. The air that emerged from below felt alive. Every spirit wolf in the crypt lowered its head instantly. Even the skeletal guardian stepped aside reverently. Lyra stared downward. Something waited below. Something ancient enough to terrify even the dead. Kale stepped beside her. You're not going alone. Lyra looked at him. You still trust me? The question escaped before she could stop it. Kyle went quiet. Outside the crypt, war horns continued echoing across the kingdom. Inside, Ghost wolves watched them in silence. Finally he answered. No, the honesty hurt. But then, I trust what happens to my wolf when you touch me. Lyra's breath caught. Kael looked away first, as if admitting even that much had cost him something dangerous. Seline suddenly laughed again, tired now, almost bitter. You truly don't understand. Kael's gaze sharpened. Understand what? The priestess looked directly at Lyra. The old queens never merely bonded kings. Her pale face tightened. They judged them. Silence. Then slowly, Seline turned toward Kael. If the buried throne awakens fully, her voice dropped lower. The Covenant Queen gains the right to strip the Alpha King of crown, wolf, and kingdom. The words hit like lightning. Lyra stared at Kael in shock. Kael's expression became unreadable. The spirit wolf spoke softly behind them. The queen decides whether the king is worthy. Everything suddenly made horrifying sense. The council's fear, the massacre, the erased bloodline. House Vane had not simply advised kings. They had power over them. And now the ancient covenant was waking again. Kael looked toward the black doors below the staircase, then at Lyra. For one dangerous moment, uncertainty passed between them. Not hatred, not fear. Something worse. Awareness. Because now, both of them understood the truth. If the buried throne accepted Lyra completely, she could destroy him. And somewhere deep below the kingdom, the ancient throne room waited to see what she would choose. For one long moment, no one moved. The crypt breathed around them. Blue fire flickered along ancient stone, while distant war horns echoed above the kingdom, like approaching judgment. Dust drifted through the air in slow spirals, as the black doors beneath the staircase stood half open in the darkness below. Waiting, Lyra could feel them calling to her now. Not voices, recognition. Like something buried deep beneath the mountain, had opened its eyes the moment her blood touched the throne crypt. Kael stepped closer to the staircase first. Every instinct inside him screamed not to descend. Kings survived by controlling what they feared. But tonight the kingdom itself had slipped beyond control. The dead wolves, the awakening throne, the mate bond tightening between him and a woman his court wanted, executed. And worst of all, the possibility that his father truly had built the crown on murder. Kael had spent years believing his curse was punishment for weakness. Now he feared it was inheritance. Behind him, Seline's voice cut softly through the crypt. If you go below, she said, the old covenant fully awakens. Kael did not turn around. Perhaps it should. The priestess's expression hardened instantly. You would risk losing your throne? Kael's silver eyes darkened. If my throne depends on lies, it was never mine. The answer silenced even the spirit wolves. Lyra stared at him quietly. Something shifted painfully inside her chest. Not because he sounded noble, because he sounded tired, like a man who had carried a kingdom alone for too long. Kael looked toward Rowan. Seal the upper crypt after us. Rowan frowned sharply. Majesty, if the Western Pax breach the palace, no one reaches the buried throne. And if you don't return? Kael's jaw tightened. Then burn the stairway. Silence crashed through the chamber. Even Lyra looked at him sharply. You would destroy it? I would destroy anything before letting civil war consume this kingdom. The cold certainty in his voice unsettled her. Kael did not cling to power like other rulers. That made him more dangerous, and perhaps more lonely. The Alpha King descended the staircase first. Lyra followed slowly behind him. The deeper they walked beneath Greyhaven, the colder the world became. The stone walls changed again. These were not crypt tunnels. They were halls. Ancient royal halls carved from black obsidian, veined with silver moonstone. Massive wolf statues lined the passage, each bearing crowns unlike the modern Draven throne. Olda. Wilder. The air smelled faintly of ash and frozen roses. Lyra's footsteps echoed softly behind Kael's heavier stride. Neither spoke at first. The silence between them felt too full already. Question. Fear. The bond pulling tighter beneath both their skin. Kyle finally slowed near a massive archway covered in faded carvings. Lyra stopped beside him. The wall depicted wolves kneeling before a crowned woman surrounded by spirits. Not a king, a woman. And standing beside her, a kneeling alpha. Kale stared at the image grimly. The old stories always claimed kings ruled alone. Lyra traced the faded carving carefully. They lied. Yes. Something about the way he said it carried bitterness deeper than politics. Lyra glanced toward him carefully. You hate your father. Kyle went still. The silence that followed answered enough. Then quietly he said, I respected him once. Not anymore. Lyra looked away. She understood that kind of grief. The grief of realizing the people meant to protect you became the source of your wounds instead. Another howl echoed somewhere ahead. Closer now. The corridor opened into an enormous underground chamber. Lyra stopped breathing. The buried throne room stretched before them beneath the mountain like a forgotten kingdom beneath the kingdom. Moonlight poured from cracks high above the cavern ceiling, illuminating ancient silver pillars wrapped in roots. Hundreds of spectral wolves filled the chamber silently, watching from the shadows. And at the center, the original throne. Unlike the black iron throne above, this one was carved entirely from white stone and enormous wolf bones. Ancient silver runes glowed across its surface like living veins, but someone had tried to destroy it. Deep claw marks scarred the throne. Blood stains darkened the floor around it, and kneeling before the throne itself was a woman made entirely of silver light. Lyra Froze. The spirit woman slowly lifted her head. Silver eyes, dark hair, the same face from Lyra's visions. Not identical. Older, stronger, royal. The spectral woman rose slowly from beside the throne. Every ghost wolf in the chamber lowered itself instantly. Kyle's breathing tightened beside Lyra. The Moon Queen, he whispered. The spirit woman looked directly at Lyra and smiled sadly. My blood survived. The voice shattered something inside Lyra, not because it sounded powerful, because it sounded relieved. Tears burned instantly behind Lyra's eyes. Who are you? She whispered. The woman stepped closer. I am Evelyn Vane, last Covenant Queen of the Old Throne. Lyra's pulse stumbled violently. Unchest door. Queen. Blood. Everything felt suddenly too large for her skin. Evelyn's gaze softened painfully as she looked at Lyra. You have your mother's eyes. Lyra nearly broke apart hearing that. Kale stayed silent beside her. Watching. Always watching. Eveline finally turned toward him, and all warmth vanished from her expression. Son of Draven. Kyle straightened instinctively. You know what my father did. Yes. The Queen's voice sharpened like winter steel. He butchered the Covenant bloodline beneath Moon Truce. The chamber darkened. Ghost wolves growled softly. Kale met her gaze anyway. I did not know. No, Evelyn said quietly. But you inherited the curse regardless. Kyle's jaw tightened. Lyra stepped forward carefully. What exactly is the curse? The ancient queen looked toward the throne. When King Aldrin destroyed the Covenant line, the throne rejected his blood. The spirit wolves severed themselves from House Draven. Her silver eyes darkened. Every heir after him was condemned to slowly lose their wolf. Kale looked away briefly. Pain crossed his face again. Evelyn continued softly. The kingdom itself is dying with him now. Lyra frowned. What do you mean? The queen pointed upward. The throne above was never meant to rule alone. Without Covenant blood beside it, the kingdom fractures. Wolves grow violent. Packs rebel. The dead awaken. Everything happening tonight. The civil unrest. The spirits rising. Kyle's dying wolf. It was all connected. Lyra looked at the ancient throne uneasily. And me? Evelyn's gaze softened again. You carry the last living Covenant blood. Kale's expression darkened immediately. No. Evelyn looked at him calmly. You already know it. Kale's silence confirmed enough. The mate bond pulsed sharply again between him and Lyra. Stronger this time. The ancient queen noticed instantly. So the throne chose quickly. Lyra looked between them nervously. Chose what? Evelyn stepped toward the throne slowly. The covenant bond. Her voice echoed softly through the chamber. King and queen, wolf and spirit, crown and memory. Kael's entire body tensed. The bond is incomplete. For now. Lyra's pulse hammered painfully. No, this couldn't be fate. Not after everything. Not with him. The terrifying Alpha King who barely trusted her. The man raised by the bloodline that destroyed hers. Evelyn studied both of them quietly. Then softly she said, "The throne does not choose love." The words settled heavily through the chamber. It chooses balance. Kael looked toward Lyra then. Something dark and conflicted moved behind his silver eyes. Because balance was not tenderness. Balance was burden. And yet, the way his wolf reacted whenever she touched him felt far too raw to be political. Evelyn raised one pale hand toward the throne. "Come forward, Lyra." Fear curled instantly through her stomach. "What happens if I do?" The queen's expression turned solemn. "The throne will judge the king." Silence. Kael went completely, still beside her. Lyra looked at him. "You knew." "Yes." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because if the throne rejects me," Kael's voice roughened slightly, "the kingdom loses its alpha." The truth hit hard. That was the real fear beneath everything tonight. Not just politics. Not just rebellion. If Lyra awakened fully, as Covenant Queen, she could condemn him. The ancient throne could strip him of crown and wolf entirely. Evelyn watched them carefully. The judgment cannot be avoided any longer. Far above them, another war horn sounded. Closer now. The western packs had breached the outer gates. Time was running out. Kael looked toward the buried throne slowly. Then toward Lyra. "If the throne decides I'm unworthy," he said quietly, "you must let it." Lyra stared at him in disbelief. "You're asking me to destroy you?" "No." Kael's silver eyes locked onto hers. "I'm asking you to choose the kingdom over me if necessary." The words should have made him seem noble. Instead, they made him seem heartbreakingly alone. Because Kael truly expected to be sacrificed eventually. By the throne. By the kingdom. By her. And somehow that hurt worse than the ghosts. Evelyn extended her hand toward Lyra again. "The judgment begins now." The ghost wolves rose together around the chamber. The ancient throne ignited silver. And Kael Draven slowly walked toward the seat where kings were either crowned or condemned. The buried throne room fell into absolute silence as Kael approached the ancient seat. Not fearful silence. Expectant silence. The kind that existed before execution or coronation. Ghost wolves circled the chamber slowly, their translucent bodies moving through pillars and broken stone like drifting moonlight. Thousands of pale eyes followed the Alpha King as he climbed the black steps leading toward the throne. Lyra could hear her own heartbeat. Too loud. Too fast. This should not have been her place. She was not born to crowns. She was born to whispers behind closed doors and villagers crossing the street to avoid her shadow. Yet somehow, every ancient spirit in the chamber looked at her as if they had waited centuries for her arrival. Kael stopped before the throne. Silver moonfire illuminated the sharp lines of his face, the scar across his throat, the exhaustion buried beneath years of control. For the first time since Lyra met him, he looked vulnerable. Not weak, never weak, but exposed. Like a sword finally removed from armor, Evelyn stepped beside the throne slowly. "The covenant judgment requires truth," the ancient queen said softly. Kael gave a humorless smile. "Then this throne will hate me already." Lyra frowned slightly, but Evelyn's expression did not change. "Do you know why your wolf weakens, Kael Draven?" Kael's silver gaze darkened. "Because my father cursed our bloodline. That is only part of it." The chamber grew colder. The Spirit Queen looked directly into his eyes. "Your wolf dies because you inherited his guilt." Silence crashed heavily through the hall. Kael's jaw tightened instantly. "I did not murder House Vane." "No," Evelyn agreed quietly. "But every year you sat the stolen throne without seeking truth. The kingdom judged your silence." The words struck hard. Lyra saw it immediately. The old wound beneath Kael's control. He had known something was wrong for years. Perhaps not the full truth, but enough to suspect. And still, he remained king. Because kingdoms did not survive uncertainty. Because fear made people cling to power, even while it poisoned them. Kael looked toward the throne. "You think I wanted this crown?" "No," Evelyn said softly. "I think you feared what would happen if you abandoned it." That hit deeper, because it was true. Kael had not ruled for glory. He ruled because no one else strong enough remained. And somewhere along the way, sacrifice became isolation. Lyra suddenly understood why he looked tired all the time. Not physically, spiritually. The burden of holding together a dying kingdom alone. Evelyn turned toward Lyra. The Covenant Queen must decide whether the king remains worthy. Lyra's stomach twisted painfully. No. Every spirit in the chamber watched her. "I can't judge him." "You already are," Evelyn answered. The mate bond pulsed sharply beneath Lyra's skin. Kael looked away, almost as if he could not bear hearing it. Evelyn extended one pale hand toward the throne. "Place your hand upon the covenant stone." Kael obeyed first. The moment his palm touched the throne, the chamber exploded with visions. Lyra gasped. Suddenly she stood inside Kael's memories. A young prince kneeling beside a dying wolf pup while nobles whispered behind him. A boy barely 13 standing beside his father's coffin, while counselors discussed whether his bloodline had weakened. Years of war. Years of carrying crowns heavier than armor. Years of sleepless nights hiding the pain of his dying wolf from an entire kingdom. Then another memory. Kael discovering hidden records beneath the palace years ago. Names erased from history. House Vane. The massacre. His father's seal. Shock. Horror. And then, silence. Because he buried the truth again. Not out of cruelty. Out of fear. If the kingdom discovered the crown itself was cursed, the northern packs would tear each other apart. The vision shattered. Lyra stumbled backward, breathing hard. Kael looked at her quietly. No defense. No excuse. Only truth. "I tried to protect them," he said softly. Lyra's chest ached. Because she believed him. Evelyn's voice echoed through the chamber. "And what did your silence cost?" Another vision erupted. This time Lyra saw herself. Years alone. Children throwing stones. Temple priests branding her cursed. Villagers refusing her shelter during winter storms. All because the kingdom needed monsters to hide its sins. Kael flinched visibly watching it. Pain crossed his face sharper than any blade. Lyra looked at him. "You knew enough to stop it." The words trembled slightly. "Not accusation. Worse. Disappointment." Kael closed his eyes briefly. "Yes." Silence spread heavily between them. Then suddenly, the throne ignited. Silver flames erupted violently across the chamber as ancient runes awakened beneath Kael's hand. Ghost wolves began howling together, their voices shaking the buried kingdom itself. The Covenant had begun judging. Kael's body jerked violently. Black veins exploded across his skin as the curse surfaced fully for the first time. Lyra gasped. The curse was alive, not symbolic. A living thing inside him. Shadow spread through his silver eyes, while his wolf snarled in agony beneath his ribs. Kael dropped to one knee. The throne room trembled. Evelyn's expression sharpened. The throne demands truth without chains. Kael looked up painfully. "What does that mean?" The Spirit Queen's gaze hardened. "You cannot rule through fear anymore." The words hit like prophecy. Because Kael had built his reign on control. Necessary control. Protective control. But still fear. Fear of weakness. Fear of rebellion. Fear of becoming his father. The curse fed on all of it. Kael gritted his teeth as dark shadow spread further across his throat. The spirit wolves growled uneasily now. The throne was deciding. And losing. Lyra felt panic rise sharply inside her chest. What happens if he fails? Evelyn answered softly. The throne strips his wolf completely. Kael's breathing roughened. He knew. He had known this was possible all along. And still he came here. Lyra stared at him in disbelief. You were willing to die. Kael finally looked at her again. His silver eyes had begun darkening toward black. If my blood poisoned the kingdom. His voice strained painfully. Then perhaps death is mercy. The words shattered something inside her. Because he meant them. After everything. The wars. The burden. The loneliness. Kael truly believed he deserved destruction if it protected everyone else. Lyra stepped toward him instinctively. No. The throne room shook violently. The spirit wolves raised their heads sharply. Evelyn watched silently. Lyra knelt before Kael. His body trembled beneath the curse now. Not from fear, from resisting transformation. The darkness inside him was trying to consume his wolf entirely. And still, he looked more worried about her than himself. Move back, he warned roughly. If the curse takes control, I don't care. You should. His voice cracked slightly. The first crack Lyra had ever heard from him, because he was afraid. Not of dying, of hurting her. That realization struck harder than anything else tonight. Lyra reached toward his face carefully. Kael caught her wrist instantly. Don't. But his grip shook. Lyra looked directly into his eyes. You asked me to judge you. The mate bond pulsed fiercely between them now. Wine. Heat. Need. The throne itself seemed to hold its breath. You hid the truth, Lyra whispered shakily. And I hate that. Kael closed his eyes briefly. But you still protected people, she continued, even while you were breaking apart alone. His grip weakened. You could have become cruel, she whispered. You could have ruled like your father. The curse trembled violently beneath his skin. But you didn't. Kael's breathing faltered. Lyra touched his face. The moment her hand reached his skin, silver light exploded through the throne room. The mate bond awakened fully. Every spirit wolf howled together. Kael gasped sharply as the darkness inside him recoiled violently beneath moonfire spreading across his body. Lyra saw everything then, not just his pain, his loneliness, the endless exhaustion of carrying a kingdom, terrified of weakness. The nights he nearly collapsed alone after council meetings. The moments he wanted to abandon the throne but stayed, because no one else would survive it. And beneath all of it, the terrifying depth of what he already felt for her. Not soft love. Not yet. Something fiercer, protective, possessive, devoted enough to destroy himself first. Kael looked at her like the bond terrified him now, because she could feel everything. Every scar, every fear, every buried emotion he no longer knew how to hide. The throne ignited brighter. Evelyn stepped backward slowly. The judgment changes, she whispered. But suddenly, war horns exploded directly above the buried chamber. Then screaming. Rowan's voice echoed faintly through the upper crypts. Majesty. The western packs breached the palace. The throne room shook violently, and from somewhere above them, the sound of battle began. Steel screamed against steel above the buried throne. The battle had reached the palace. Dust rained from the cavern ceiling as distant howls echoed through the mountain like the kingdom itself tearing apart. The ghost wolves surrounding the throne room lifted their heads uneasily, while blue moonfire flickered violently across the ancient pillars. Kael rose slowly from the throne steps. The darkness beneath his skin had retreated after Lyra touched him, but not completely. Thin black veins still shadowed his throat like cracks beneath ice. Yet his wolf no longer sounded dying. It sounded furious. Kael looked toward the ceiling where the battle raged overhead. They came faster than expected. Evelyn's silver gaze darkened. The western alphas smell weakness. No, Kael said quietly. They smell opportunity. Lyra stood beside him now, the mate bond still burning painfully beneath her skin. She could feel him more clearly after the awakening. His anger, his exhaustion, and beneath all of it, fear, not for himself, for the kingdom. The realization unsettled her deeply. Kael looked toward Rowan's distant tunnel entrance. We need to return above. Evelyn stepped forward sharply. If you leave before the covenant seals completely, The curse may return. Kael's expression hardened. If I remain below while my people die, I am already unworthy. The throne room fell silent. Even the spirits seemed to consider his words carefully. Then, slowly, the ancient throne dimmed. Not rejection. Permission. Evelyn noticed immediately. The throne accepted your answer. Kael looked genuinely surprised by that. Lyra was too. Because the throne had not chosen strength. It had chosen sacrifice. A violent tremor suddenly shook the buried chamber. This one stronger than before. Cracks spread across the cavern walls while ancient dust thundered downward. Then, a scream echoed from the upper crypts. Human, agonized. Kael moved instantly. Stay behind me. They rushed back through the buried halls together, ghost wolves racing silently beside them through the darkness. As they climbed toward the crypt entrance, the smell of smoke thickened rapidly. By the time they reached the upper chamber, the crypt had become a battlefield. Bodies littered the broken floor. Temple guards, royal soldiers, Western pack warriors wearing blood-red wolf armor. Blue spirit fire burned across shattered stone, while Rowan fought 3 attackers near the staircase, his blade slick with blood. Kael entered the crypt like a storm. His wolf exploded outward violently. Not fully shifted. Worse. Half shifted. Monstrous silver eyes. Black claws. Fangs glinting beneath moonfire. The Western warriors froze in terror. Then Kael attacked. Lyra had never seen anything move that fast. He tore through the first warrior before the man even finished raising his weapon. The second slammed into a crypt wall hard enough to crack stone. The third tried to flee. Kael caught him instantly. Pure alpha fury radiated through the chamber now. Not wild. Controlled. Terrifyingly controlled. The surviving attackers backed away immediately. Where is Seline? Kael demanded. One wounded soldier laughed weakly through blood. The High Priestess opened the upper gates herself. Rowan cursed sharply. She betrayed the palace. No, Kael said coldly. She chose survival. Lyra's pulse tightened. Of course Seline had done this. The priestess realized the throne was awakening and panicked. If Covenant blood returned publicly, the Moon Temple would lose centuries of authority overnight. So she chose chaos instead. Civil war was easier to control than truth. A low growl suddenly spread through the crypt. Not from Kael, from the ghost wolves. They were staring toward Lyra. She frowned slightly. What is it? Then, she heard it. Crying, far above the palace. Human voices screaming in terror. The spirits were hearing the dying. And somehow, so was she. Lyra staggered slightly, as new sounds flooded her senses. Wolves fighting in the throne hall. Servants trapped beneath collapsed stone. Children crying somewhere, inside the eastern palace wing. Too many voices. Too much pain. Kael caught her. Immediately. Lyra. She gripped his arm hard. The palace is falling. His silver eyes sharpened instantly. How do you know? I can hear them. Fear crossed Rowan's face. The bond is spreading through the kingdom already. Kael looked toward the crypt exit. Decision hardened instantly inside him. We retake the throne room now. Rowan nodded sharply. But Lyra's stomach twisted painfully. Because through the bond, she felt something else. Not just fear. Hatred. The Western packs were not simply rebelling. Someone was driving them. Someone who wanted the buried throne destroyed before dawn. Seline. No. Someone above even Seline. A memory surfaced violently inside Lyra's mind. The vision she saw earlier. Silver masks beside the old king during the massacre. Not priests. Counselors. The Western packs had always been involved. They know, Lyra whispered suddenly. Kael looked toward her immediately. Who? The noble bloodlines. Her pulse hammered painfully. The families who helped kill House Vane. She looked toward the throne above them. They're trying to destroy the Covenant permanently before the kingdom sees the truth. Rowan's expression darkened. That means this isn't rebellion. No, Kael said quietly. It's erasure. The crypt shook again. Then suddenly, a roar exploded from the upper halls. Massive. Inhuman. Every ghost wolf in the chamber snarled instantly. Kale's expression changed immediately. That's not one of ours. A wounded royal guard stumbled down the crypt stairs seconds later, covered in blood. Majesty, he gasped desperately. They brought a hollow beast. The chamber went silent. Even the Roven Ventpale. Lyra frowned slightly. What's a hollow beast? No one answered immediately. Then Kyle spoke quietly. An execution monster. Cold spread through Lyra instantly. Kyle's silver eyes darkened further. The old kings used them during blood purges. His jaw tightened visibly. They're fed on wolf souls until nothing remains except hunger. The spirit wolves growled furiously around them. Abomination. Another roar thundered above. Closer now. The wounded guard shook violently. It already killed 2 alpha commanders. Kyle grabbed his sword. We move now. Rowan rallied the remaining soldiers immediately, while Lyra followed Kyle through the upper stairway toward the palace halls. The moment they emerged from the crypt, chaos swallowed them whole. The palace was burning. Smoke poured through shattered hallways while nobles and servants fled, screaming past overturned statues and blood-covered marble. Wolves fought openly beneath royal banners torn apart by battle. And at the center of the throne hall, the hollow beast waited. Lyra stopped breathing. It had once been a wolf, perhaps centuries ago. Now it looked like something dragged back from hell itself. Massive skeletal limbs covered in black fur. Twisted antler-like bones protruded from its spine, while silver chains wrapped around its body like rotting flesh, stitched together by curse magic. And its eyes, empty, not cruel, hollow, like all soul had been eaten away long ago. The beast roared again. The sound alone shattered nearby windows. Western pack warriors knelt around it, while Seline stood beside the throne platform, pale robes stained with ash. The high priestess looked almost relieved, seeing the creature, because it meant the old noble bloodlines had committed fully now. No returning from this. The hollow beast sniffed the air once. Then, its empty eyes locked directly onto Lyra. Every instinct inside her screamed, "Run!" Kale stepped in front of her instantly. The hollow beast growled low, and something horrifying happened. Kale's wolf answered, not submissively, recognizing. Lyra's stomach dropped. The hollow beast had been created from royal wolves. Seline smiled coldly from across the ruined throne hall. You should have stayed buried beneath the kingdom, she called toward Lyra. Kyle's voice became lethal. You unleashed that thing inside my palace? The priestess lifted her chin. I unleashed judgment. The hollow beast suddenly lunged. The entire throne hall exploded into violence. Kyle shifted fully this time. Silver-black fur burst violently across his body as the Alpha King transformed into a massive wolf larger than any Lyra had ever seen. His silver eyes burned like moonfire as he collided with the hollow beast hard enough to crack the throne platform. The impact shook the entire hall. Nobles screamed. Western warriors scattered. Ghost wolves erupted from the floor itself, racing through the battle in bursts of blue flame. And standing in the center of the chaos, Lyra suddenly heard every dead wolf in the kingdom cry out together. Not in fear, in warning. The hollow beast was heading toward the buried throne, and if it reached the covenant chamber below, it would devour the ancient spirits themselves. The throne hall became a nightmare of fire and silver fur. Kale's massive wolf crashed against the hollow beast again, claws tearing through blackened flesh while shattered marble exploded beneath them. The creature roared, with a sound so unnatural, it made every living wolf in the hall recoil in pain. It did not bleed. Dark smoke poured from its wounds instead. The hollow beast slammed Kale across the ruined throne platform hard enough to splinter ancient stone. Nobles screamed and fled through burning corridors while Western pack warriors fought royal guards beneath falling chandeliers. And through all of it, the dead wolves howled. Lyra stood frozen in the center of the chaos, her heart hammering violently as ghost wolves spiraled around her like stormfire. The hollow beast wasn't trying to kill Kale. It was trying to reach her. Or worse, the buried throne beneath the kingdom. Seline saw Lyra realize it. The High Priestess smiled coldly through smoke and ash. "Yes," she called over the battle. "It remembers covenant blood." Lyra stared at her. "You created that thing." Seline's pale eyes sharpened. "No, your ancestors did." The words hit like ice. Another deafening crash shook the hall as Kael's wolf tore into the hollow beast's shoulder. The beast retaliated instantly, antlered bone ripping across Kael's side. Blood exploded across the throne steps. Lyra gasped. The mate bond slammed pain directly through her chest. Kael staggered, not because of the wound, because he felt her panic too. Their eyes met across the burning hall. For one terrible second, everything else disappeared. The war, the ghosts, the kingdom. Only him, bleeding beneath the throne, while still positioning himself between her and the monster. Always between her and danger. The hollow beast roared again and charged toward Lyra. Kael lunged to intercept it. Too slow. The creature's skeletal claws slammed into Lyra, hard enough to throw her across the ruined hall. Pain exploded through her ribs. The world spun violently. Then silence. For one strange moment, Lyra heard nothing at all. Not the battle. Not the screams. Only a soft voice inside the darkness. "Rise, last daughter." Lyra opened her eyes slowly. The throne hall had changed. Or perhaps she had. Silver light spread beneath her body in glowing cracks across the marble floor. The ghost wolves surrounding the hall had stopped fighting entirely. Now they knelt. All of them. Even the dead. The hollow beast froze mid-step. Its empty eyes locked onto Lyra, as moonfire rose around her body like living mist. Seline's face drained of color. "No." Lyra slowly stood. Pain still tore through her side. Fear still clawed through her chest. But beneath both, something ancient awakened fully. The Covenant. The silver mark over her heart burned through her torn dress, glowing brighter than fire itself. Every wolf in the throne hall lowered its head, including Kael. Not willingly. The bond forced it. Lyra stared at him in shock. The mighty Alpha King struggled visibly against the instinct pulling his wolf downward. His silver eyes burned fiercely. Not angry. Fighting. Because some part of him refused to kneel before anyone. And yet his wolf recognized her completely now. Covenant Queen. The words echoed through the hall from every spirit wolf at once. The hollow beast suddenly roared in agony. Silver chains erupted from the floor around its body. Not physical chains. Spirit chains. Ancient covenant bindings. The creature thrashed violently while ghost wolves surrounded it from every direction. Lyra stepped forward slowly, and memories flooded her mind. The truth. Not fragments this time. Everything. Long ago, the Covenant Queens had created the hollow beasts during the Blood Wars. Not as weapons of cruelty. As punishment, they were made from wolves who betrayed sacred law and slaughtered innocents beneath moon truce. The beasts existed to carry endless hunger forever. But after House Vane fell, the noble bloodlines twisted the creatures into execution monsters. The dead had not risen tonight for vengeance alone. They rose because sacred law itself had been broken for generations. Seline realized Lyra understood, and panic finally consumed the High Priestess, completely. "You cannot awaken the old throne," she shouted desperately. "The Pax will never follow you." Lyra looked at her quietly through silver fire. They already followed fear. The hollow beast broke one spirit chain violently. The throne hall shook. Kael shifted back into human form beside the ruined throne, blood covering his side as he struggled to stand. "Lyra," he warned roughly. "Move away from it." But she could feel the creature now. Not evil. Tormenta. A wolf soul, buried beneath endless pain. The hollow beast lunged toward her again. This time Lyra did not run. She lifted one trembling hand. Enough. The entire hall froze. Moonfire exploded outward from her body. Not destructive. Commanding. The hollow beast stopped instantly mid-charge. Its massive body trembled violently beneath the covenant power spreading through the hall. Then slowly, the creature lowered itself before her. Everyone stared in disbelief. Western warriors dropped their weapons. Even Seline looked horrified, because the Covenant Queen had fully awakened. Lyra stepped toward the beast carefully. Its empty eyes watched her silently now. No rage left. Only exhaustion. Tears burned behind Lyra's eyes. "You were never meant to become this," she whispered. The hollow beast whimpered softly. The sound shattered the throne hall. Because monsters were not supposed to sound broken. Lyra placed her glowing hand against its skull. The mate bond pulsed violently. Ghost wolves howled, and the hollow beast began dissolving into silver ash. Not dying. Released. The tortured wolf soul beneath the curse emerged slowly from the darkness. A massive silver wolf, scarred by centuries of pain. For one final moment, the freed spirit looked at Lyra, then toward Kale, and bowed. The spirit vanished into moonlight. Silence crashed through the throne hall. The war stopped. Completely. No one moved. No one breathed. Because the impossible had happened before the entire kingdom. The grave-marked girl had commanded the dead, freed a hollow beast, and awakened the Covenant throne. Seline staggered backward slowly. "No," she whispered again. "No, this was buried. We buried this." Lyra turned toward her. Silver fire reflected in her eyes now. "You buried truth." The High Priestess looked suddenly small standing beside the ruined throne. Not powerful, just frightened. Kale rose painfully to his feet behind Lyra. Blood dripped from his side onto the broken marble. But his wolf no longer felt dying through the bond. For the first time in years, Kale felt whole. The Western Pack warriors slowly began kneeling one by one. Not out of fear. Recognition. The dead wolves circled Lyra silently, as moonlight poured through the shattered ceiling above the throne hall. And then, Kale Draven stepped forward. The entire kingdom watched. The Alpha King stopped before Lyra, while smoke curled through the ruined palace around them. His silver eyes searched her face carefully, as if even now he still could not fully believe she was real. Then slowly, Kale dropped to one knee. Gasps echoed across the hall. Not because the Covenant forced him, because this time, he chose it. "My queen," he said quietly. The words hit harder than any battle. Lyra's breath caught painfully. Kale lowered his head before her, in front of the entire kingdom. Not in weakness. Trust. The most terrifying thing a king could offer. And for the first time in her life, no one looked at Lyra Vale like she was cursed. They looked at her like the kingdom itself had remembered her name. No one in the throne hall dared breathe after Kale knelt. The ruined palace stood frozen around them beneath falling ash and shattered moonlight. Smoke drifted through broken pillars while blood stained the marble steps below the throne. And in the center of it all, the Alpha King bowed before the girl they once called grave-marked. Lyra stared at him in stunned silence. Her pulse still shook from the Covenant awakening. Silver fire flickered faintly beneath her skin, while ghost wolves circled the hall like living memories. But Kael's words struck deeper than magic. "My queen," not because of power, because he meant it. The realization terrified her. Kael slowly lifted his head. Silver eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that made the entire throne hall disappear for one dangerous heartbeat. There was no fear in him anymore. No hesitation. Only certainty. And somehow that felt far more frightening than the curse ever had. Around them, Western Pack warriors lowered their weapons one by one. Some knelt immediately. Others stared at Lyra with visible confusion, unable to reconcile the frightened girl from the moon trials, with the woman standing surrounded by dead wolves and Covenant fire. The kingdom was changing in real time, and everyone felt it. Selena saw it too. The High Priestess backed slowly away from the throne platform, pale with horror as centuries of carefully buried lies crumbled around her. "You fools," she whispered shakily. "You have no idea what you awakened." Kale rose slowly from one knee despite the blood still pouring from his side. His wolf surged strongly beneath the bond now. Alive. Fully alive. The difference radiated through the throne hall like a storm finally breaking after endless winter. Kale looked towards Seline coldly. "No," he said quietly. "I think we finally do." The priestess laughed suddenly. Sharp. Desperate. You think the covenant will save this kingdom? Her eyes flicked toward Lyra. The old queens drowned the north in blood long before House Vane fell. Ghost wolves growled low around the hall. Lyra frowned. What are you talking about? Selene's smile twisted bitterly. The covenant was never mercy. She pointed toward the buried throne beneath them. The queens judged kings because they feared kings becoming stronger than them. Evelyn's spirit appeared suddenly beside the shattered throne. Lyra. The ancient queen's voice cracked through the hall like steel. Selene flinched visibly. Evelyn stepped forward slowly, silver eyes burning cold now. The covenant existed because power without memory becomes tyranny. Silence followed, because everyone in the hall knew exactly what she meant. House Draven proved it. Selene's expression hardened. You still destroyed kingdoms. Yes, Evelyn answered softly. When kings deserve destruction. The throne hall darkened. Not from magic. Truth. The Covenant queens had never been decorative rulers. They had been balance. Judgment. A restraint powerful enough to terrify men who wanted unchecked crowns. Lyra looked toward Kael slowly, and suddenly she understood why the old bloodlines feared Covenant queens enough to massacre them. Because a queen capable of commanding the dead could expose every buried crime beneath a kingdom. Kael saw the realization cross her face. His silver eyes softened slightly. You understand now. Lyra looked away. I understand why they hated us. The words hurt more than she expected. Us. Not just her. Her mother. Her bloodline. An entire history stolen from the world. A violent crash interrupted the silence. The massive palace doors burst open. Commander Rowan entered first with dozens of bloodied royal guards behind him. The western packs are retreating, Rowan announced breathlessly. The throne hall erupted into murmurs instantly. Retreating? Kael frowned sharply. Why? Rowan looked toward Lyra. Because the dead wolves appeared outside the palace. Silence crashed again. Lyra's stomach tightened. What? Rowan's face had gone pale. They rose from the burial field surrounding Greyhaven. Thousands of spirit wolves. He swallowed hard. The rebel packs broke formation the moment they saw them. The covenant was spreading beyond the throne hall now. The kingdom itself was awakening. Selene suddenly looked afraid again. Not politically. Spiritually. Because now, there was no containing this anymore. The people would see. The dead themselves had chosen Lyra publicly. Kael turned toward the gathered nobles still hiding throughout the hall. Send word across the northern territories, he ordered coldly. The Covenant bloodline lives. Shock spread instantly through the surviving council members. One noble stepped forward shakily. Majesty, if you announce this publicly, every rival kingdom will panic. Good. The answer stunned them. Kael's silver eyes darkened dangerously. Let them fear truth for once. Lyra stared at him quietly. The Alpha King looked different now. Not softer. Never soft. But freer. As if the curse crushing him for years had not only poisoned his wolf, it had buried parts of himself too. Selene realized she was losing everything. The throne. The temple. Control. Fear sharpened across her pale face instantly. Then suddenly, she moved. A silver dagger flashed from her sleeve. Straight toward Lyra. Kael reacted immediately. Too immediately. The mate bond exploded between them as he intercepted the blade with his bare hand before anyone else even saw it coming. Blood splattered across the throne steps. Lyra gasped. Kael didn't. His silver eyes remained fixed on Selene with terrifying calm while blood dripped slowly from his fingers. You never learn, he said softly. The High Priestess stared at him in shock. Not because he stopped her, because he protected Lyra without hesitation. No political calculation. No fear of appearances. Instinct. The bond had become absolute. Royal guards seized Selene instantly. The priestess struggled violently now. You think she will save you? She screamed toward Kael. The covenant destroys kings eventually. Kael looked toward Lyra briefly, then back at Selene. Perhaps kings should fear becoming monsters. The words silenced the hall. Seline stared at him, as if she no longer recognized the man before her. Maybe she didn't, because the lonely king who ruled through fear was beginning to disappear, and something more dangerous was replacing him. A ruler willing to share power. The high priestess was dragged away screaming, while the remaining nobles watched in shaken silence. Then slowly, on everyone, the surviving alphas dropped to one knee before Lyra. Not forced, choosing. The emotional weight of it nearly crushed her. For years, people looked at her with disgust, fear, pity. Now entire packs bowed their heads before her, and she still felt like the same frightened girl standing beneath silver chains at the moon trials. Kale stepped beside her quietly. "You don't need to kneel back," he murmured. Lyra almost laughed weakly. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do." For the first time all night, a real smile touched his mouth. Small, tired, beautiful enough to steal breath from her lungs. "Neither do I." The honesty in it unraveled something inside her. Because beneath the throne and prophecy and ghosts, they were both still wounded people, trying to survive the ruins left behind by older generations. Another silence settled between them. Different this time. Not tense. Aware. The mate bond pulsed softer now, warm beneath Lyra's skin instead of painful. Guile felt it too. His gaze lowered briefly toward her hand, toward the place where her fingers still trembled slightly from the battle. Then slowly, carefully, he reached for her. Not possessive, not commanding, asking. Lyra let him take her hand. The moment their fingers intertwined, the spirit wolves surrounding the throne hall lifted their heads together. Moonlight flooded through the shattered ceiling above them, and far beyond the palace walls, the howling finally stopped. The kingdom had recognized its queen, but peace did not come with silence. It came with choice, and standing hand in hand beside the broken throne, Lyra suddenly realized the most frightening part of all this was not the dead wolves, not the covenant, not even the crown. It was how much she already feared losing the man beside her. Because Kale Draven no longer felt like the enemy her bloodline should hate. He felt like home.